Well, let me go back up one step and also add to the morticians. The four morticians got they got full rapidly, and so then we had the bodies delivered to the gymnasium at South Junior High, and my brother was a dentist, and he organized the other dentists to go in and start to identify these bodies by forensic dentistry, because many of them didn't have any identification on them. Some of them were maimed. They had hung on to things and had been beaten up pretty badly with fast-moving trees and things of that nature. So we ended up finding all the bodies but 5. There were 5 bodies that were never recovered. These were all 5 young men in their 17 to 21 years of age, all strong swimmers, and they must have swam a long ways before they finally were overtaken by this horrible flood. We never did find those bodies, even though we searched every pond, every little sump hole. We had divers working to try to find those bodies and never did find them. That obviously prompted us to look into the history of the flood along Rapid Creek over the years, and at that time we started learning about 100-year floodplain. And so we had all the hearings, and we just firmly planted our feet and said, we will not let anybody sleep in the floodway again, in the 100-year floodway. And so the engineers started to survey where that would be, and in some cases, it's hard for the public to understand, but right on the creek where the Brocklesby house stood that didn't have any damage, now stands the Rapid City Golf Club clubhouse, and it's right on the creek, but yet there's a full golf course going to the bluff to the south that's wide open for the stream to come through. And when we got to areas where we could not remove the structures because they were just too, it cost too much money to move it, quite frankly. And those structures, then we have berms and different ways of directing the water to open sites so that another flood of that nature will pass through Rapid City. It will cause some damage, but we hope it will not cause any lives, because one of the jobs of Mayor Barnett and myself and others that are having this 40th memorial anniversary, June 9th, is to encourage people to pay attention when it rains here. Their car can float away. You could go into a street and it looks like you might be able to get across it, and the next thing you know, your car is floating away. And once you're in a car, it's like a floating bomb. You don't know when it's going to tip over or fill full of water or what's going to happen to it. So our job was to keep people from building in the floodway, which we did. And I just today learned that we had 482 acres of parkland. Today we have 1,842 acres of parkland or open space for the water to go through Rapid City.
Larry and Don, I think one of the things that precipitated too was there was Pactola. Now, am I right that there was talk that night, because a lot of that heavy rain started up around Silver City in that area and then down toward Johnson Siding. It just hung and it just rained and rained and rained. And then there was the fear that Pactola, the dam, could burst. Wasn't that one of the...
Certainly had that fear myself. In fact, my house is directly across the golf course from where the clubhouse is now.
All right.
When the rain got so heavy, starting in the early evening, when I tried to walk across the golf course so I could communicate and I found out I couldn't by the fire trucks over across, and I got back across the golf course in time with my 12-year-old son, but the water was becoming very deep. And I spent that night out on the deck because I feared that if Pactola would go out, then we would have to all get to the highest ground there is, because everybody would wash away that's in low ground.
Yeah, I can probably help just a little bit here, Grant.
Yes.
Pactola was there, and it was big and it was durable. The water elevations on Pactola only went up about 1.5 feet because the clouds above Pactola were big, but there wasn't many of them. But most of the water fell in an area about 15 miles by 10 miles along Rapid Creek in those canyons, and we had 14, 16, and 17 inches of water in some of those cells. And so 150 square miles, every drop of that water fell by gravity, eventually toward Rapid Creek and then toward Rapid City, and then toward the Cheyenne River and then the Missouri River and then New Orleans eventually in the Mississippi River. But I will tell you that if Pactola would have gone, the amount of death would have been in the thousands, not in the hundreds. But of course, that was a fear we had all night. Now, the State Highway Patrol, they understood that too, and they had a highway patrolman up there with a two-way radio parked at the dam all night long, and he was giving periodic reports to the state police radio and confirming that Pactola had not collapsed. So some of the public safety people knew that Pactola looked to be stable, and it never did threaten to collapse. But it was a terrible fear that if Pactola went, then a great deal of Rapid City would have been underwater.
Now, that precipitated then the addition to Pactola, where they built for the 500-year flood, because we talk up in that Silver City area and up toward Mystic in there, that those same cloud formations could happen again, where all of that moisture up in those canyons would then come down and empty into Pactola. And if they hadn't done this big major project, for the 500-year incident, I think they call it, you just can't imagine until you're in the hills and you see some of that rain as it can come down.
Yeah. Well, it was really bad, but we were able to patch together state and federal programs, and the council by policy, and they were always unanimous, we relocated 1,500 homes from the dangerous banks of Rapid Creek.
Sure.
It took about 4.5 years. It was about two-thirds done when I left office, and Mayor Art LaCroix then served 12 years as mayor, and he finished it. And we relocated those people, and there was a gigantic building boom in Rapid City with new subdivisions that were well-planned and not in low areas, not in dangerous drainage areas. And Rapid City had a significant building boom, and our tax base became much stronger than it was before the flood. And so consequently, it became just a stimulant to great growth in the Black Hills. And there was an infusion of $170 million from the federal government that came into the Black Hills, and that caused a period of economic growth, and that continued for many, many years. And Larry has some numbers on that.
Yeah, I think it was 1970, our population was a little over 43,000. Today, the city population, we're not talking county population, but city population is nearly 69,000. And of course, the county has grown tremendously as well, and I don't have the growth of the county as well, but a lot of the people in Rapid City that were able to relocate themselves bought homes outside of the city when theirs was condemned or was washed away.
Talk a little about, because we came down through Rapid City and Jackson Boulevard and the shopping center there on Jackson Boulevard in Omaha, isn't it? What's that big shop?
Bacon Park Shopping.
Bacon Park Shopping. Bacon Park. That swirled around there and then went down. And then on to Rapid Valley, and from there, silt and bodies and cars and unimaginable devastation all the way east there, I believe.
Yes, it did, and
true.
We lost 5,000 cars, and they were eventually, a lot of them were consolidated when the wrecker services could move them. But there was just horrible devastation. It went clear down into Rapid Valley, east of the city.
In fact, I remember one story because it's a friend of mine. I was a Little League baseball coach that time, and I had a family called the Vanderbeeks, and their son was on my baseball team, and both of the mother and father were right below Canyon Lake, and they thought the wisest thing to do was get in their boat, which was chained to their boat trailer, which was chained to a tree. And they thought they would ride it out in the boat because they were smart enough not to try to drive in the water. You know, all four of them, an older son that was 17, Matt, who was 12, and mother and father got in the boat trailer. Matt was only one that survived, and he says it was like the boat trailer exploded. He said all of a sudden it was just like it exploded. We were all catapulted into the water. The mother and father's bodies were found about 75 yards downstream. Matt was found just barely alive, swimming in the Bacon Park parking lot, grabbing onto debris and trying to swim to higher ground. But in that same area was the Safeway grocery store, and in talking to one of the employees of the Safeway grocery store, he told me he was 16 years old and he went to work the day after the flood, and there was 3 bodies in front of the Safeway store in Bacon Park parking lot. And Matt was picked up out of the parking lot in a motorboat driven by a friend of mine and taken to safety. His older brother was one of the strong swimmers who was never found.
Just one story after another. Don Barnett, who was mayor during the horrible flood of 1972, and Larry Lytle, who was on the city council at that time. Don, thank you so much, and Larry, thank you so much. Don, we put these in archives, and I'm sharing, we sent them on to Bernie Hunaw, publisher of South Dakota Magazine, who will continue to have these CDs, and they will be on record there. And thank you so much for this first-hand information. It's been, brings goosebumps, I think, on everybody listening in. You know what?
Well, thank you, sir. Yeah, we're always proud of Brookings. I'm a South Dakota jackrabbit, and let me tell you, Brookings is one of South Dakota's most wonderful communities, and I want to say a big howdy to my friends there in Brookings, and Bob Burns and his family are my dearest friends in this whole wide world, and everybody in Brookings knows Bob and Donna. So
absolutely.
God bless all of you down there.
Thank you so much. And Larry, thank you so much, too. And we certainly appreciate this time, Don. And I know you're going to have a very emotional and meaningful commemorative of the 40th year of this horrible night in June.
That's right. It'll be real nice. And we invite the folks to watch the programming on South Dakota Public Television. The 2-hour program will be on Saturday night, June 9th. And it's well planned, and the speakers are going to be phenomenal, and it'll be a real historical moment for all of South Dakota to look back upon that terrible night in 1972. And Grant, I just want to say again, it wasn't me that led Rapid City out of that disaster. It was the 10 members of the city council. They had the wisdom and the fortitude and the fiber in their spines, and we moved everybody from those dangerous areas, and we will have flooding again. But the next time we might damage the park, but we won't kill hundreds and hundreds of people, and that's wisdom. And the best thing that government could do was relocate those families. And that makes Rapid City a safe city for future generations. And we thank your listeners very much.
Thank you both so much, and we'll look forward to, again, visiting with you sometime in the future, Don.
Thank you.
Don Barnett, who was mayor of Rapid City in 1972 at the time of that horrible flood.